This conference will now be recorded.
There we go.
Call it to order. I think we're recording now. I will go ahead and call the Tuesday, May 26, 2020 Lincoln County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. First of all, to establish a quorum and do a little sound check, do I have Commissioner Hall here?
Present.
And what about Commissioner Hunt?
Also present.
Great. Okay, we do have a quorum. I'm going to go around to who else is joining us on call today and do introductions and a kind of audio check there. Christy Peter.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Wayne Belmont.
I'm present.
Rebecca Austin.
I'm here.
Nicole Fields.
Present.
Curtis Landers.
I'm here.
Roy Kenyon.
I am present.
Okay, Wiley Thompson.
Wiley's here.
Great. Jerry Urbidge.
I'm here.
Rachel.
I'm here.
Okay, and is there any other callers?
Hi, Katie. It's Kristen Ewell. I'm on the phone.
Okay, hi, Kristen. Thanks. All right, well, welcome, everybody. First, we're going to do the adoption of our consent calendar. These are items of a routine nature, but either commissioners or staff can pull items for further discussion if needed. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar as presented. Sorry, Claire.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Hunt, second by Commissioner Hall. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Motion carries. No nays. Okay, next up, under reports, Lincoln County Public Health COVID-19 update presented by Nicole Fields, and usually Rebecca Austin will join in as well. So Nicole, would you like to kick us off?
Good afternoon. Sure. So I'll give you an update on our numbers here in Lincoln County. We have 9 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in our county. 6 of those have recovered, and we have done 1,369 negative tests in our county. So some of the things we've been working on over the past week have really focused on our vulnerable populations. We're kind of looking to shore up a hotel program so that if we get folks that are struggling with houselessness, they have a place to go while they're recovering from COVID-19 or awaiting test results if they're symptomatic. We're also working with our federally qualified health center on hopefully doing some testing with our long-term care facilities. That's something we still need to work out some details on, but we've seen we know that our long-term care facilities house quite a few vulnerable residents there. And so we want to work with our federally qualified health center to do some testing of staff to make sure that those facilities are as safe as they can be. We're kind of holding tight on that one, so I don't have a ton of additional details on that at the moment. But we're working with our partners to try and get that set up in the very near future, so we'll have more details soon. We're also continuing to do a lot of outreach to our seasonal workers. We realize that that looks a lot of different ways here in Lincoln County between our fish processing plants and our mill and some of the farming work that gets done later in the season. But we developed a packet as part of the Keep Lincoln County Open campaign that is going to be distributed to all of the hotels in the county. And that basically just has really local information about what to do if you start feeling symptomatic, how to kind of keep yourself safe, what local resources are, and some just general coronavirus information. So we're getting those out to all of the hotels to hopefully be distributing to people as they check in to help keep our out-of-towners safe, whether that is our seasonal workers or folks that are here on trips or anything like that. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is I know that there is some interest in antibody testing. The state isn't quite ready to release a ton of information about that yet because antibody tests can't reliably diagnose or rule out active COVID-19, and they're not exactly sure if antibodies confer or indicate full or partial immunity to COVID-19 yet. So there's still studies ongoing about that. But I think what the state is trying to do is find a really reliable antibody test to be used. And then hopefully they can do some epidemiological work later on once they have a reliable test to kind of figure out where the virus has been and if there is any immunity associated with having had it. So I think that that's kind of just something to keep in your mind that is coming down the road, but not quite here yet. And then I'm not sure if Rebecca has anything else she'd like to add, or I can take questions.
Rebecca, go ahead if you have things to add.
Sure, I'll just add that the board will be seeing a new contract coming across your desks soon. One of our contracts for public health between the state and the local public health is called Program Element 1, which governs our communicable disease program, has been updated to include some COVID-19 activities. And it's actually quite a few pages, and it's divided into two sections. One is for the local authority around active monitoring, and the other one is a regional epi support. And for this purpose, it was decided that our region would be the one that we join to do the reopening. So basically, it's all the reopening criteria that we had to write to become eligible to open up. And then they've added a section about cultural and linguistic competency and responsiveness. And that is really being pushed by the governor. And so we will be engaging more of our minority populations and vulnerable populations that are a particular risk for COVID-19. And I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like yet, but we are working on that feverishly because we'll probably have to get a plan in pretty quick. I don't know what the deadline is on it yet, but Nicole and Molly and I have already started working on it. And I just want to give you a heads up that that is coming. And unlike usual added requirements from the state, this one actually comes with some money. So I think we can actually get some things done that we really have wanted to do for a long time regarding health equity in our communities. So this will be really helpful for us and kind of the push and nudge that we needed to get things off the ground. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. And I think I have to do a grant concept paper now for any changes in our contracts. So that will be coming your way as well.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from Commissioner Hall?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, Commissioner Hunt, questions, comments?
Yes. Could you clarify, and I'll let either Nicole or Rebecca provide the response, but clarify the situation as far as testing of large groups, whether they be seasonal workers that are coming into the area or healthcare providers in senior residences, assisted living facilities. My understanding is we cannot require them to take the test, but is that correct? And what kind of receptiveness have we experienced as we've tried to test these groups rather than individuals?
So this is Nicole. Correct. We can't require folks to get a test in this situation. It's, opt in if they would like to kind of participate in any of our pilot programs. We've kind of had mixed results from working with the state on this. I think that some of the testing we would be doing, we have to understand is very much a point in time snapshot, because these people, like if we tested all of the staff from a long-term care facility, the expectation is not going to be that those folks then go home and quarantine until they get their test results back. We understand that they're working, they can't kind of put their life on hold as an asymptomatic person who we have no reason to believe has COVID-19 to just quarantine and take that time away. So I think we've had a harder time kind of getting on the same page with the state with some of those asymptomatic testing protocols, but we definitely can do them through the private labs or through our FQHC. So we have some other resources to do them. And yeah, our reception has been mixed. Some of the facilities that are part of larger corporations kind of already have the testing piece handled. Like they're either handling it with a larger corporate office that is kind of facilitating that testing for their staff, or they feel like they have solid enough protocols where they're not interested in at this time. And then we've had some that are really excited about it and definitely have let us know that they are ready and willing and able to participate as soon as we can kind of get the procedure in place.
Okay, thank you. And
So
if I
this
may
is
make-
Rebecca, and I can just add to that when I'm looking at the new contract that they have really stepped away from urging us and encouraging us to test large groups, mainly I think because of what Nicole has already stated. But it does say that we want to work with our partners and ensure that testing is available. So it's an insurance kind of a role that public health will be playing, and we will be working with large groups if they want to test, and we'll be required to keep a list of those people and entities that are regularly testing. Because I'm pretty sure I just read the plan for the jail, and they're going to be doing some regular testing. So that's one entity that we'll keep our eye on and probably add to our list. So it's ever evolving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Couple questions from my end. One is, I forget the exact number you said, but it's over 1,000 something negative tests that we've had in Lincoln County. I know early on there was a lot of frustration around having available test kits and being able to run those, although things have really changed in terms of the quantity of testing that we are doing in this county and across the state as well. What's the average number of tests that we are doing in a week in Lincoln County at this point in time?
So this is Nicole. The last time I ran those numbers, it was about 120 per week, which is not, our capacity is more than that, actually. Samaritan is saying that they have a capacity to test between, I think, 150 and 170 folks a week, and we're not quite meeting that just because we don't have a number of symptomatic people that are talking to their provider about getting tested quite yet. And our test result, like our positive rate, is very low still in this county. It's 0.7% of the folks that are getting tested are testing positive. In comparison, like Lynn County is around 3%. Some of the larger counties around Portland are almost 5%. So we're very low on the fact that we're getting more test results done and still low positive rate.
Yeah, and my understanding is in talking to Samaritan as well that it's much easier to get a test than it was, earlier on in this. And so for people that might be listening, if you have symptoms, and of course that symptom list has really expanded since we started this as well. My understanding is you simply just need to talk to a provider and then make an appointment basically to go and do one of the drive-up clinics. So it has gotten a lot easier to get testing as well. The last thing I was going to say is just more of an announcement about egg workers. My understanding is the governor has freed up a lot of PPE, personal protective equipment, from the Oregon Office of Emergency Management, specifically for agricultural workers, which includes fishing. And I believe the OSU Extension Service is going to be the distributor of those to the egg community locally. I don't remember the date off the top of my head of when they are doing that. I think it's coming up here maybe later this week or next week. Oh, actually, Wiley's on the phone. Wiley, do you know the date of that distribution or how people that are an egg worker that need or want PPE, how they go about getting that through Extension?
Absolutely, Commissioner. Thank you. It'll be on Thursday for Lincoln County. And if people are up in like North County and the Tillamook office is closer, they can go to the Tillamook Extension office on the same date. It'll be 9 to 4. And so this is applied to our fishing fleet, our agricultural producers, which include our tree farmers as well. So anybody that has workers, they'll be handing out the KN95 mask and hand sanitizer.
Say, and OSU Extension parking lot here in Lincoln County?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Thank you for that. All right. Moving on, incident management team update presented by Rachel Maddox Hughes and followed by Wiley.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the long weekend. So commissioners, I'll give you a couple of quick updates. I have informal word that our FEMA pre-approval for non-congregate housing has been approved. I'll let you guys know when I have that all in writing, but that's great. That's for up to 100 rooms every 30 days. That's approximately an $88,000 value. So with FEMA, they cover 75% of it, and I did find out that the CARES Act will cover the other 25% of it. And so Wayne, actually, it's something good for us to circle around on and make sure that's inputted into your application for this Friday. We as a team, Newport and Lincoln City and Yachats and the county applied for matching funds from Business Oregon for grants to small businesses. And we applied for the most, apparently, of any particular region or coalition, which is good. And we will find out tomorrow on that, but I expect that we will be getting a significant portion of our ask for those matching funds. In addition, a few weeks back, we submitted about a $500,000 grant to the FCC to support telehealth. And I just got off the phone with Merkley's office today, and the senator will be sending a letter of support in to the FCC to help nudge them along. In addition, I just found out about a great opportunity that is not being highly tapped into in our region as of yet in all of Oregon, and that's the EDA. So the EDA got $1.2 billion through the CARES Act, of which $266 million is coming to our region. So that's Oregon, Washington, California, and Alaska. And to date, there's only been one inquiry into the senator's office that they know about, which is, I think, Grant County. And so there are some opportunities here for funding. And so I'll be circling around with some of you guys this week to figure out what we'd be interested in looking at. And a coalition of applicants is obviously going to be the strongest application. In addition, on the broadband front, we are getting together. We're going to be setting a meeting in about the next 2 weeks for people to come together and discuss an opportunity that's in front of us with the USDA around funding infrastructure for broadband. So we'll make sure that all of you guys get that invite when it comes out. And then the last two pieces is that if all the funds from Business Oregon weren't confusing enough, there's two other pots that we're looking at in addition to the matching funds that we applied for. And those are around economic grants to small businesses again, and then something that may cover other public services such as buying PPE for nonprofits, Head Starts, etc. And then there's the normal Business Oregon Community Development Block Grant application that is due in July that has a bunch of different areas associated with it. So that is what we've got going this week. Any questions?
Commissioner Hall, questions for Rachel?
No questions.
Commissioner Hunt?
Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just second what Commissioner Hunt just said. It's been really, really nice having you on our team during this to track all these various opportunities that are coming, and it's not always been super clear how those dollars reach communities or reach citizens. So it's nice to have someone whose sole purpose is really making sure that those dollars do what they're intended to do, which is help communities. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, Wiley, updates from you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Had a great discussion with the Mayor of Siletz last week and talked about how we can bring that team in and focus on some of their interests. I'd offer any of the other communities, their elected leadership or just some of the community members want to talk with me, go through the plan. Very, very happy to do that. Working with Rachel on the broadband piece, we really see that as coming together. And have had some very fruitful discussions and expanding right now, sort of mapping the actors and the players and seeing how everybody connects to support that effort. The Coastal Equity and Inclusion Committee are really behind what we have going on, and we're looking forward to some good opportunities from them to make sure that as we go through this, we don't create a bigger gap across what we're seeing happening in the community. And so we appreciate your efforts. And subject, and I've talked to all 3 commissioners and have their input, and looking to get any more of their thoughts as they come to them. But subject to your questions, that's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Hall, questions?
Nope.
Hunt?
No, I just appreciated the time that Wiley spent going over the outline as far as plans, and again, good work. It's appreciated.
Indeed.
Wiley, I have one question. You said you talked to the mayor of Selects here last week. Have you had, what cities have you not had direct conversations with elected leadership yet?
So Will's the only mayor I actually have talked to.
Okay.
I have talked to planners, emergency managers, so different folks across a number of places. Walport, no. Yachats, no. Toledo, no. Newport in some different capacities. I feel a little more plugged in there, but I'm always looking for more input, especially as we build the teams and we get the right people on there to make sure like all the interests are invested in this process.
Okay, thank you. That helps me. I know you gave an update at our joint meeting we had a couple of weeks ago, so everyone did hear from you. But I will, after we're off our meeting today, I will send an email to the mayors that you haven't had direct communication with and copy you, and just as a way to kind of facilitate conversation. So I will do that.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, still under reports, reports from commissioners. Commissioner Hall, anything to report?
Not right now.
Okay, Commissioner Hunt, anything?
Well, I'll actually ask Nicole, I believe she's still on the conference call, to report on the presentation to the Depot Bay City Council about the tobacco licensing program, please.
Sure, absolutely. So it was presented last week to the Depot Bay City Council, and I believe 5 of the 7 council folks were there. It was kind of moderately well received, I think. They wanted to do, Sarah and Amy Snyder were there, and they wanted to do kind of a refresher about what tobacco retail license is and what it would look like in Depot Bay. And some of the same concerns came up about, not wanting to put an undue burden on the businesses of Depot Bay. And I think that they're looking for some additional data. So it definitely wasn't a closed door, but I think that they're ready to hear some more information and kind of look forward to hearing what the other areas of the county are thinking of doing.
Thank you. I think that's a positive step.
Mm-hmm.
And good work to Sarah and Amy.
Thank you. I'll pass that along. We're very glad to get another opportunity to present to them.
Thank you.
As far as reports from myself, I have several things I want to kind of talk about, but I'm going to wait until we're in the reopening Lincoln County discussion and directions.
Okay.
So with that, I guess we'll move into reopening Lincoln County discussion and directions. I think there's several different things that maybe both commissioners and staff want to bring up. Kind of on my list, and maybe you guys can add to this, is I definitely want to talk about today sort of a mask wearing recommendation. I at least get a lot of inquiries into my inbox about is it a requirement? Is it a recommendation? Can it be a requirement? So I guess I want to understand that a little bit. Kind of phase 2 and what we know and largely what we don't know. I also want to get an update. I know we've had an internal team working on opening up county buildings along with courts, which is a state issue. And and then also some stuff around outdoor recreation. So that's kind of on my list of things. I'm sure there's other things people want to discuss as well. First, I was going to start with Wayne. I think you had some items you wanted to start with.
I do. Thanks, commissioners. Let me start off with actually where we're at right now, a couple things that are happening right now in the whole area of a reopening of the county. Rachel and Wiley gave a great presentation on what we're doing for recovery, and our philosophy is to build back better, and that's what we're doing in terms of applying for a number of the funding streams that are out there. But we're in phase one. Phase one, as set by the governor right now, requires a minimum of 21 days before we can even consider going into phase two. But I think there's a lot of confusion around what phase two means and what it doesn't mean. And at this point, I want to make it really clear that phase two is not something that's automatic. So I think a lot of people are thinking, you know, we start in phase one on May 15th and we'll go automatically into phase two on June 4th. And then that is not the case. All indications from the state are that they have to still develop their final guidance as to what phase two will be. And we're going to move into that slowly. I think it's a wait and see process right now to see, you know, what happens with the disease, the progression of the disease, before there are decisions made as to whether or not we go into phase two. At this point, we don't know if that entails an additional application. We don't know if it's, you know, what exactly the metrics are going to be, and we don't know what, how the changes between phase one and phase two will evolve. So a lot of questions and answers are not necessarily there right now, but I think to the extent that folks are thinking that it's an automatic move into phase two, that's not the case. That's the one thing we know from the state. For us, we have begun the process of the reopening of the lodging industry. Our application process to date has included about 400 applications. Now we're processing applications for both the county and the city of Yachats, and we've gotten a number of applications for other jurisdictions. We're taking that information and turning it over to those jurisdictions, even those that started on earlier dates. But it looks like we're getting prepared for reopening on June 1st. And I think that's going really well. I'd like to really commend our joint information staff, Sarah Traxel and Casey Miller, Jess Palma, and various others who've been involved in putting together the application and then processing this. It's gone very smoothly for what is a, you know, a very big undertaking on our part. The next thing I'd like to talk about a little bit is the application we're going to make for the CARES Act funding. And that is that the state finally did release some money to local governments that we can apply for. It doesn't cover all the categories that we might be eligible for, but it's at least a start. Initially, that application was supposed to be due last Friday. We worked very, very hard to put together our numbers to make the application. And then at the very last minute, and we had been requesting this for a long time, the state actually extended the application period. So it will be due this coming Friday. To assist me in that process, I would like to get a motion from the Board of Commissioners so we can get on the record today that you authorize me to certify and apply for that funding. So I'm going to stop right now and see if we can't have that motion made and recorded in the minutes.
I would be happy to move that the board authorizes Wayne Belmont to apply on Lincoln County's behalf for CARES Act funding.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, no nays.
Thank you. This is the first round of funding under the CARES Act. We're still working with the state to try and release larger amounts of money for local governments and including some money that would help, we think, with the economic recovery process that we're engaged in right now. So to the reopening of the county itself, we do have a team that's been working on that. Kristen Ewell has been our lead for the county, and I'm going to turn it over in a minute to her to talk about some of the policy directions we need to discuss and maybe answer some of your questions. I do want to note that as part of that process, we have folks all across the county participating as a team, as well as we're working with the courts, because obviously the courts have their own reopening schedule that is dictated in part by the Chief Justice in terms of the broad parameters for what the courts are going to do, but also the presiding judge then makes some decisions on a local level. And we want to make sure we're coordinating our process with theirs. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kristen and have Kristen talk a little bit about face coverings, because that is an issue that we do need some policy direction from you. And then a little bit about how we're working on returning the county to full operation.
Hey,
Thank you, Mr. Belmont. Hi, Commissioner Jacobson. So you might have seen the draft reopening checklist that we put together for Lincoln County facilities. So really what we've done is the reopening committee, who's made up of a lot of the department heads, we've tasked each department with basically preparing their workspaces for customer service transactions, if necessary, in person. We're still encouraging appointments. We've had, so just some examples of what we've put in place. Departments have to have some kind of check-in process in place for visitors. So if they are going to have appointments, that they would keep track of names and who has been in the department. And the reason for this is to do contact tracing if necessary. If we do have somebody that is positive and for investigation purposes, we need to know where they've been. Some other things that we've done is equipment. We've had to install a lot of kind of retrofit a lot of counter spaces for customers to come in person. So facilities has done a great job with that. So where we stand now is all departments are ready, to my knowledge, if we did have in-person contacts. I think telework and appointments are still going to be the preferred method until we're told otherwise. But some guidance that we need is for the reopening of the courthouse, we do need some guidance on masks. And if you're going to be requiring masks of all visitors, I can tell you just querying some other counties are encouraging masks, but they're not requiring them. The reason why is for legal reasons. You know, we're a public entity. It's not the same as a private business. You can have businesses like grocery stores that require it, but they're private, so that's different. So we do need some guidance on the masks, and then also just a reopening of county facilities.
Could I ask a question, Madam Chair?
Of course.
Kristen, what are the legal issues that we face as a governmental entity in potentially requiring masks that are different from a private business choosing to do that?
So obviously as a government entity and also providing the space where courts are located, for services where people are required to have in-contact services for certain things such as court appearances, or for example, for even county services like fingerprinting, you know, there's nowhere in the law or the Constitution that says you must wear a mask. So it's different for a public entity than it is for a private business. And I'll let Larry, Wayne, and Jerry chip in if they have any other comments. But you know, the recommendation from us is that we will encourage masks. We do have a supply where we could provide people coming into the courthouse with a mask if they don't have one, and certainly encourage masks. I know the courts are going to require masks, I think, at least to my knowledge. So when somebody goes into the courtroom, that's what the idea is. Be aware that a lot of people will be asking for accommodations, including our own employees that cannot wear masks because of health or medical issues. So we are anticipating that we're going to have to provide accommodations for people as well.
Okay.
So, but, you know, if a service can be, when somebody comes in and they are not able to wear a mask or don't want to wear a mask, if there's an alternate means for providing the service, such as over the phone or by email, we're going to encourage that. If there isn't an alternate means, such as somebody getting fingerprinted, you're not going to be able to require somebody to wear a mask.
Let's just stay on it sounds like there's a couple of things you need guidance on, Kristen, but if we can kind of stay on the mask wearing thing for a minute. Jerry or Wayne, did you guys want to kind of weigh in on that?
Yeah, this is Jerry Herbige for the record. I completely support the position that Kristen Ewell has taken. It's consistent with other counties. From a pragmatic standpoint, it's really what we need to do, in my opinion. There are so many nuances and health issues. I think it's best that the county encourage the use of masks, but not overtly require them. That'd be my position.
The only thing I would add, and I agree with my colleagues, but the one thing that we will be doing, and you could make the policy choice, is for employees to wear face coverings. And I'd like to use that term if we can, instead of using masks all the time, because that is actually the terminology that the CDC and OHA use. It's face covering. So it's not necessarily just a mask. It could be other cloth coverings that people could wear. So let's use that more generic term of face coverings. But that's at least the recommendations we're making right now is would be for employees to be wearing these for the protection of both the public and for each other.
So Wayne, could I just chime in? It's Kristen again. Yes, we are going to be requiring employees to wear face coverings, but we're encouraging that or requiring it when you're in common areas, when you're not able to socially distance. So within offices, our recommendation, at least from the committee, is that we're not going to require it while the employee is at work for all working hours if they are able to distance their workstation and also just distance themselves from other coworkers while in the office. But while they're traversing in common areas or within the courthouse or other facilities where there's more people and working with customers, we would require it.
Thanks for that clarification. That's right.
Commissioners, this is Curtis. Can I weigh in just a second?
Sure.
Just following up on this, because I knew that coming through screening, we would have to, I don't know if enforce is the right word, or just kind of impose if you were going to provide a mandatory face covering policy for everyone. And in talking with the judges and working with them on the court piece of it, they are requiring it in the courtrooms. And we were just looking at some consistency that we would have all employees, or not employees are going to, but all public wear it coming through. And then it would be one single form where the screener will be able to make sure someone is wearing a mask. Unless they have some type of disability that they couldn't, then we need to make accommodations just like we would for any other thing. And looking at what CIS is recommending, CIS is saying that we can require visitors to wear a mask entering the building, or face coverings. And it is because it's recommended by the Oregon Health Authority, and it is also part of Governor Brown's statewide face covering policy. And so they're saying that governing bodies can institute face coverings for anyone coming in, unless, again, there's an accommodation that needs to be met because of a disability. And that would really help our screeners going through, not to say, are you going to court, you're gonna need a mask. If you're going to the clerk's office, you don't need a face covering, this type of thing. So my opinion, I would encourage that we have it all. Plus the other piece of it is we're requiring employees to wear it. And we know that wearing a face covering is to protect others, not to protect itself. So this would help protect our employees when they have to work one-on-one with somebody to help them with whatever they're in the courthouse for. So it would be my recommendation that we do move forward with requiring it.
Yeah, I guess I have a question. So it sounds like courts and Lincoln County Circuit Court will be requiring mask wearing when you're in the courtroom. And so I guess, do we just simply have a differing of legal opinion between the county and the state? I mean, because the legal opinion we're getting from county council is that we can't make that a requirement for the public, yet the court system obviously feels that they can when the public is coming.
If I might weigh in, frankly, you put 3 attorneys in a room and ask them an opinion, you're going to get 5 answers. So, you know, this thing has not been tested. It has not been tested anywhere yet in the country in terms of what you can and can't do. I find it interesting that the state, if you look at their actual guidance, it's a recommendation. And I understand, Sheriff, what you're saying in terms of what's coming out there, but I actually went on the DAS website, for the state agencies, and they are saying it's a recommendation to wear face covering. They're not requiring it at this
But yeah,
point.
yeah,
So I know. So it's kind of very inconsistent. Frankly, that's why we're giving it to you as a policy decision. We're not saying up or down. We will, if you wish to go and say that you would like to have everyone in the courthouse do that, we'll support that, and we will, make that work. I'm just saying that there's questions out there. I think this is a more than probably any other issue that we're facing in this whole discussion around COVID. This thing of face coverings is, I think, the one that's most fraught with potential risks and liability on both ends, both as a public health measure and then the question of the legality of doing it.
okay.
So just to chime in again, because I think this is pretty important because I deal with a lot of the accommodations that arise, is if you had somebody come in through security and they indicated that they cannot wear a face mask because of a medical condition, we're only allowed to ask a couple questions. And you can't require a doctor's note. You can't force them to produce paperwork. They would basically say, I have a disability, I cannot wear a mask. And we would have to accommodate that. So I would be really careful. I don't know where the court or who's advising them legally. We're a separate entity, obviously. But, my opinion still stands that it's not legal to require somebody to wear that to access services that are required to be in person. Obviously, if services can be provided alternately, such as on the phone or email, then that's fine. And that's all I'm going to say about that, that there are going to be a lot of people asking for these accommodations. And it's the same for the courts. If somebody went into the courtroom and said, I cannot medically wear a mask, they can't require
Hmm.
Commissioner Hall, questions, comments?
Well, just in the way of comments, Chair Jacobson, you mentioned that this has been a very hot topic in your inbox. It's been the same in mine, and I wouldn't be surprised to hear from Commissioner Hunt that it's the same in his. And, I obviously don't want to do anything that isn't legally defensible, but on the other hand, I just think we have such an opportunity. Maybe it's not a big one, but we have an important opportunity here, I think, to set a tone, send a message in the community, call it what you will. It's interesting. There is one world leader who refuses to wear a mask, allegedly saying that it would make him look weak, and yet, the president of France, I saw a commentary about how he's made mask wearing a point of national pride, and that in part because of that, France is seeing very high compliance rates. So I don't know. I want to hear more. I guess I'd say I am conflicted at this point on I feel like I know what we should do. I don't know, what we can do. And let's see where it goes, I guess.
Yeah, and I would just reiterate that this is just about our public buildings and not on, making it mandatory, in the whole of public. We're just talking about
Right.
the buildings we own and provide service.
Yeah, I understand, just in this building, but still the message that it maybe sends to the community.
Okay, Commissioner Hunt, questions, comments?
I think my questions focus on the enforceability of it. We've talked about people that would have medical exemptions or, require accommodations. What about the people that say no? Are we going to prevent them from entering the courthouse? Can we legally prevent them from entering the courthouse?
That's an issue we'll have to deal with. let me just put it that way. We've had some, questions raised, and I think that's some of the questions that I have still is how the enforceability of that. If you refuse somebody access to services, how are you going to do that? As Kristen indicated, we've got alternatives, and we can provide alternatives. We're probably not violating certain laws like the Americans with Disabilities Act if we're providing an accommodation of some kind. But there are some open questions with this. I think that I don't see it as black and white as I think some of my colleagues in the legal profession see it in terms of what we do. So what I'm going to recommend that you guys do, and remember, we're going to be making some decisions about other facilities in the county. It's not going to be just the courthouse. We have a number of other services we provide in areas outside the courthouse.
Health
So I think
clinic, veterans office, many others. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think what we wanted to do was raise this issue with you to say, we're not going to give you a black and white yes or no. We're telling you that the policy implications as well as the legal implications of what we want to do. We're going to continue to do more work in this area, talk to a number of our colleagues across the state. But this is an issue that ultimately you're going to have to give us some policy direction. And we just want to make sure that's up in front. We've got some time. We're not planning on the reopening anytime real soon. So.
Okay, and I just to kind of share my thoughts, I would say that I would like to have a mask wearing requirement. There's already a lot of existing social norms about proper dress and attire when you come into public buildings. Some of those are legally enforceable. Some are just social guidance that we all go on. We all have to wear pants. We all know we should wear shoes. We all know we should be covering ourselves to what's appropriate. And I feel like in the midst of a pandemic, face coverings is kind of a new social norm that's starting to come. So, I certainly understand that we want to do something that's legally enforceable. I do understand that there's legitimate, medical reasons why someone can't wear a mask. So I feel like we do have to kind of think through some of those things. But if we could do it, that would be my preference, I guess. And again, we're just talking about county facilities and services and things like that. So Wayne, if you feel that we have time, then can we add face coverings in our public facilities onto the decision action item for next week? Would that give you guys enough time?
I think that's great. That's a great timing for doing that.
Okay, great. So other things on kind of reopening, I want to kind of circle back to Kristen. You said, the mask wearing thing was one thing you wanted some clarity on. And I think your second thing was kind of reopening dates or timeline. Is that correct?
Right, that's correct, Commissioner. So right now, my understanding is the courts will open June 1st for some limited access. So I understand from the sheriff that there's going to be a large amount of people coming in. So it would make sense, at least for the courthouse, maybe perhaps to be open so it wouldn't have to be unlocked continuously after June 1st.
Okay, so that is June 1 is Monday. I feel like in what I just said about having our conversation about masks, having that conversation happen Monday, yeah, we probably need to change that because obviously if the courthouse were to open Monday, and it sounds like we're going to have more public in our building because courts is opening Monday, then I think we need to have that conversation and decision before Monday. So that
Commissioners, can I suggest though, the courts have been holding and bringing people in the whole time. The only thing Kristen is suggesting differently is that we leave the door open to allow people who have court, reasons to be in court to come in. And there, the courts are going to make the requirement. You can have the screener tell them right at the front end that in order to get into a courtroom, they're required to wear a face covering. And so, that it would simply be a question of signage and telling people at the front end that the courthouse is open only for people who have business with the courts. So you can still do that before we actually open it up further. That's again a phased opening. that would be consistent with what we want to do. I think what Kristen was really saying is right now they've been going to the door to let people in when they have court activities. There's just going to be more people that have court activities that need to get in that we don't want to have them running back and forth to the door all the time.
Yeah, this is Curtis. I think what we're just talking about is just leaving the door unlocked, call it a soft opening, if you will, and just to keep, so we're not having to let them in constantly, knowing that courts are going to be have increased for that date, and then you can set whatever date you want for the official opening for everything else.
Right.
Okay.
And we just need to make sure we get appropriate signage up there in time for that.
And so the court's opening June 1. I don't remember who said it, but this is not courts back up in full swing. This is on their part, sort of a soft opening as well. Is that correct?
It is. That is correct. And in fact, it's my understanding, and Kristen or Jerry, you can correct me, that they're not actually going to do the bulk of their trials, even think about scheduling trials until July 1. So this is more of arraignments, juvenile dependency kinds of hearings, some of the things that they're required to do, more face-to-face that they're going to do.
Yeah, it is basically everything but the out of custody jury trials. So we don't have to have jurors coming in, which, reduces the number of people coming in. If it's just the defendants and counsel that need to come in. So, but they are, except for that, it's almost every other proceeding. And we do have, just for example, 30 arraignments scheduled for that date. And that's probably the lightest coming up on Mondays to begin with. Because if you remember, for law enforcement, we haven't been arresting several individuals. The citations were going to play, and June 1st is the first date we were citing them since we started this in March. So it's going to progress on up for every Monday coming in. And just since we're on the topic, we have worked with the courts, and we have a plan for those in custody arraignments, because typically they used to have to be booked and released, where we have to bring them to jail, and obviously we don't want to do that. So we set up a system. There's going to always be a vacant courtroom, and they're going to run through stages up there. And we're actually going to do the fingerprinting on the second floor, where we have a fingerprint machine that we use for employers and CHLs and sex offenders. They're right outside the sheriff's office. So we have a system in place that I think will work out well, but obviously we'll have to see what bugs we encounter on the first Monday.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna make a suggestion and see if we have consensus that we stick to our next week, May 1, I'm backwards here, sorry, June 1 meeting, that we discuss and make a decision around face coverings in the courthouse for the public, as well as sort of an opening or a soft opening, or thinking about if we want to open our public buildings beyond courts, and if we want to do that, when we would do that, or how we would do that. Is there a consensus process-wise on that?
I'm good with that.
Yeah, okay. All right. So we will put that on our agenda for next week. Kristen, is that all from you?
Yes, Commissioner, thanks.
Okay, thank you. So moving down my list a little bit, a couple of things I just wanted to add that Wayne said about phase 2 opening. One is that, the phases and the requirements to get into those phases, as well as what businesses are allowed to do in those phases, is, created by the state and not by the county. I got a lot of emails over the weekend about advocating for certain choices, and I will pass those on to the state level, but they're not made up at a county level. I would also say that there's really not any clarity, as Wayne said earlier, about what exactly happens in phase 2, as well as a call I had last week, I think it was Thursday or Friday, with the governor's office staff. And I think many people have kind of took that May 15th opening and counted 21 days and kind of come up with a date. And we were basically told in that phone call to not be doing that, and not be making plans accordingly based on a date we had calculated, because that may not be the date. That it's a minimum of 21 days, not 21 days. So, clarity there, we just don't have it at this point. But I think it would be great if we could get some clarity on what that phase would mean, and what we might have to do to get there, so that we can evaluate what that might mean for our county and our constituents. But just wanted to say that. Other things I feel like we need to discuss is Lincoln County parks, and specifically camping. Day use areas of parks opened up during phase 1. Camping of county parks is still closed because we have to hold to our own lodging order that we created. So camping in Lincoln County parks, because they're on unincorporated areas, can open on June 1 or later. But there is still some questions about, group campsites and that sort of thing. And I just wanted to bring it back to the full board to kind of discuss that. And I think Roy is still on the phone if he had additional things he needed clarity on.
Actually, this is Roy Kenyon, Lincoln County Public Works Director, and talking with Keith Andreessen, the Parks Maintenance Supervisor. He had some questions. One was basically the size of the group area, whether or not that 25 number was going to stick. And then he also had some questions regarding spacing. I know that, now when you're in a grocery store or basically any retail store, you have markings on the aisles, you have markings everywhere to make sure that people understand what 6 feet is. He had some questions regarding that. And so, and I think maybe that some of that stuff is stuff we can actually look into a little bit later, what all the requirements are going to be. But the big thing is, 1, are we going to open? 2, what are we going to do with group sites? And that basically is just moonshine. We don't really have that issue in any of our other campgrounds.
Okay, thanks, Roy. A couple of questions, and I'll open it for discussion. How many people are typically in a group site at Moonshine? We're talking about 2 families or 20 or?
Well, I think that yes. The answer to that is yes. It really goes from weekend to weekend. The group sites are the only sites that we actually take reservations. And in a lot of cases, I would say probably upwards of 75% of the reservations are for large groups. We're talking, 20 plus. If it's a big family reunion, you could have upwards of 60 or 70 in one of the group sites. And then in between that, if there are kind of off weekends that aren't around a holiday or around something else special, sometimes it is just a family or 2, and you're only talking about maybe upwards of 15 people. So it's kind of all across the board, but we'll have to set a number that everybody's comfortable with.
Okay, thank you. I would just say that we obviously have to comply with the phase 1 guidelines by the governor's office, which is that you can't have gatherings of a certain size during this phase. So we obviously could not go over that, but I think the discussion is that number even something we feel comfortable with at this point, happening within our campgrounds and the facilities. So,
well, I can say though that the group sites are extremely large, and so if even within the group, if they wanted to practice their social distancing, a group of 25 people would not really have too big of an issue trying to find their own space, because it is at Moonshine, both group sites are fairly wide open. You don't have people cramped in small quarters unless that's what they choose to do.
Commissioner Hall, questions or comments on this?
Not at this time.
Okay, Commissioner Hunt.
No questions.
I'm going to make a suggestion here. And I know some kind of clarity is needed, but Rebecca or Nicole, are either of you still on the phone? No. Okay. I'll circle back with you, Roy. My thought is maybe we can get our public health experts to kind of weigh in on this a little bit and see if perhaps, one of them has time to go out and look at it, or, maybe they've previously been out for their own reasons and can kind of provide some clarity and recommendations based on what they think would be appropriate for that side in terms of this group camping. I think that might maybe be the right way, is for them to weigh in if they're able as time allows. So I will circle back with Rebecca and see if maybe someone can provide some guidance. I know they've provided guidance for some of our other facilities, not ones we own, but like the Oregon Coast Aquarium and some others I've known they have provided some guidance on, and so perhaps they can do the same for this.
Right. And if I could add one thing, up at Moonshine Park, the group sites are separated from the single family or single tent sites. And so the opening of, let's say, Moonshine, we can open one half of the park and not open up the other. And so I guess if there's some unnerving or, kind of questionable thoughts as far as going with the group sites, that whole section of the park can be closed very easily and remain empty, while the other half or 3/4 of the park could be open with, much smaller groups, like I said, the single family camping.
Okay, all right, that's helpful to know. Wayne, procedural question here. Do we need to take a vote to open up camping at our facilities? We could, as Roy was saying, we could kind of put group campsites on hold until we have some public health weigh in. But since we've already made an order on lodging, do we need to then approve our own facility to?
Yes, I think that since they're in right now they're closed, I think you need to give some direction to Roy and Keith as to what you want them to do.
Does someone want to make the motion, or do we want to move this till next week, or?
I'd be okay with making a motion. How can we phrase this to allow, what do you want to say, limited reopening, partial reopening of group camping beginning at county parks beginning June 1st?
I would make a friendly amendment to your
Sure.
motion that it wouldn't be open to group camping, but open to single family, or however we say it, single camping on June 1 instead of, I think you said group camping.
I'm comfortable with opening the, what should I say, traditionally single campsites. I think it's cleaner to just say group sites would be closed. Although frankly, in the bigger picture, I don't think it makes much difference, except that it's easier to monitor the governor's executive order that limits groups to 25 or less by keeping the group sites closed.
Okay, so Commissioner Hall made a motion. Commissioner Hunt, was that a second or a friendly amendment?
Well, I guess I'll ask Commissioner Hall to clarify the motion.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure. So what you're suggesting, Commissioner Hunt, is just saying that group camping remains closed. Individual campsites are, for now, individual campsites can open on June 1st?
Yes.
Okay, I'd be fine with substituting that motion for my original.
Okay, do we have a second?
I guess I'll second it. I'll second
Okay.
my motion as Commissioner Hall moved.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
nays? No nays, okay. So we will open kind of regular individual camping on June 1 in county parks. And I will look for some clarity on group camping, and that's something we can bring up back to this board at a later time. Okay, thank you. Moving through my list. The last thing I had is also Otter Rock. So
Commissioner Jacobson, may I add something? This is Keith Andreessen.
hi Keith, sure.
As for opening, the state parks, I believe, cannot open until after the 7th for their camping facilities, the 7th of June. So in trying to work with them, I would like to be able to coordinate with Dennis Comfort and the state parks on an opening date.
Okay, I think we just made a motion that passed to open June 1.
Yes, I've been trying to get in, but couldn't get into you guys quicker.
I think if, what I'm hearing you say, Keith, is that you feel you need a little more time to be ready to open, and you want to kind of coordinate that opening with what other parks in the area, mainly state parks, is doing.
Yes.
I would be okay in seeing if we can get a second motion to amend the one we just had if we need to make an amendment to that. So I will just go ahead and make that amendment. So I will make a motion that county parks can open on June 1 or later as our parks director is able.
I'll second it.
Okay, Commissioner Hunt seconds. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, no nays. All right, does that help you, Keith? Oh, we lost him. Okay, well.
Yes, I think
okay.
that would be beneficial for us.
All right, great. All right, moving on, I just wanted to say that state parks did open several day use areas following us entering into phase 1. Again, we don't control state parks, but we have kind of trying to, been coordinating some things with them, or at least knowing what they're doing. One of the issues that have come up, I had several emails over the weekend about this, was Otter Rock. Of course, the state park owns the park there, but we do own through a roads department a significant amount of the parking in that area, which when state parks closed for COVID-19, we went ahead and closed a significant portion of that parking to make it easier for them to enforce the closure. They are having significant, at least the neighborhood is feeling that they're having a lot of people come to that location that are not social distancing or wearing face masks, as well as an issue with that staircase going down to the beach that's very narrow. So it's very difficult to get up and down it without passing people within 6 feet. So I've been forwarding a lot of those emails on to Dennis Comfort for him to kind of know what's going on there. I think they're making some additional signage requirements and that kind of stuff with that site. But I just wanted to bring this up to the other 2 commissioners. I don't know if you have heard from residents as well, but I think this is one of those areas, again, while we don't control state parks, I think it's one that we do need to watch as we're in this reopening, and and continually have that dialogue with state parks to ensure that we're not kind of having a potential hotspot with people congregating in that area. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. Like I said, I'm not sure if you guys have heard about that one as well. That was all that was on kind of my list of reopening Lincoln County discussion and directions. I will turn it over to commissioners one by one to see if they had anything else, as well as staff. So Commissioner Hall, anything you wanted to discuss?
Yeah, okay. First question, I guess, would be, and a much broader question than even the one that we discussed about the potential of requiring face coverings within the courthouse. I've had a number of people ask me, can't we, won't we? They hope that we would make face coverings mandatory in public spaces. So I don't know if that's a good policy decision or not. I would ask, I don't know, is that even, something that could, something that's legally possible? That's, I think, the first thing I need to know before I even think about whether, of course is it legal? Is it, is it enforceable? I think that would be the big, the big issue. So that's one thing that's on my mind, probably the number one thing.
Does one of our legal counsel want to weigh in on that one?
Actually, I
Probably
think
not much different.
it's not much different than the conversation we had before. This is an untested issue out there. I think actually, Commissioner Hall, you really hit the nail on the head though in terms of its enforceability.
Yeah.
That is a huge, and I'd let the sheriff kind of weigh in. I don't know if we wanted to do that, you'd have to really clearly define what a face covering is. You'd have to really clearly define what a public space is. You'd have to clearly define any exceptions. And then you'd spend a lot of time and resources trying to enforce something like that.
Yeah.
So I think, based on at least what I would see as kind of the obstacles to doing something that's enforceable, that should weigh into your consideration.
Okay, can I go in a different direction on this? I figured there were likely to be serious challenges, if not insurmountable ones, with requiring face coverings. But what about, could we work on, and I don't think we have the resources alone to do it, but possibly with cities, chambers of commerce, I don't know, other entities. I mean, I was brainstorming after our Monday staff meeting today. One thing, what if we had some kind of a contest to recognize the most creative mask designs? Or what if we had, I don't know, something like a secret shopper program where people would go around with numbered tickets and just pop into businesses at random, and if somebody's wearing a face covering, whether they be staff or a customer, give them a ticket, and then do, I don't know, weekly prize drawings for gift certificates. I don't know. It's only the germ of an idea, and it may not be a very good one, but is this something anybody else would be interested in discussing and potentially pursuing?
I guess I would say that I'm interested in looking for how we positively reinforce the behavior we want. And if, I feel like mask wearing is a behavior we want to have people doing, then, I'd be curious in hearing some more fleshed out ideas on how we might do that. I think probably our joint information team that's done a lot of our public information and trying to get the public to wear a mask, I think they would be a really good one to help brainstorm this as well. They've done a really nice job getting information out and nice graphics and all of that. But, I'm in favor of encouraging the right behavior.
Okay.
I think certainly some ideas that might be worth sharing with Chamber of Commerce. They certainly could design some programs. They might have the resources to go out and be visiting the businesses, and they probably have the resources to have some kind of for lack of a better word, reward or incentive for wearing a face covering. But I think there's certainly some potential there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything else on your list, Commissioner Hall, for reopening?
Not right now, I don't think.
Okay, Commissioner Hunt, anything on your list?
I think we've covered the hot topics.
All right. Wayne, anything else on your list?
Nope, that's it for me. Thanks.
Okay, let's see, we did Keith and Roy. Sheriff Landers, anything else on your list for reopening that you needed clarity on?
I don't think on that. I can just give you just a very quick update on Memorial Day weekend with being phase one, that report from the deputies. It was the traffic, what they basically said it was lighter than usual for a holiday weekend, although it was pretty heavy, as if you were out and about, you probably saw. The state parks that were open were very busy. Fogarty Creek was mentioned. It wasn't a bad weekend for crime and calls for service, and they indicated they responded very little to any of the restrictions type of calls. But it was obvious that people were taking advantage of the coast being open. And as far as the marine, with the halibut opening, there were a lot of boats. The ocean was good, I think, at least on Saturday, and but still lighter than normal for a halibut weekend.
Thank you. Okay, anything else from other staff that's on the phone? No, okay. All right, moving out of COVID stuff. Still under decision and action items, awarding a bid for North Beaver Creek Bridge replacement presented by Roy Kinnan, our Public Works Director.
Hello, I'm back. North Beaver Creek Bridge replacement. It is on Walkow Road off of North Beaver Creek Road. We opened bids on May 6th of this year. Received 3 bids from contractors. Waldron and Sons Incorporated came in low bid. They were just slightly lower than the engineer's estimate. It was an acceptable bid. And this is a project that is going to start next fiscal year. So after July 1 of this year. Starting date is still kind of up in the air. That's a little more dependent upon when the contractor wants to get started. I think in-water work period starts July 15th, so they could actually start moving in a little earlier than that. The bridge is supposed to be completed by the end of October. And so, like I said, this is a good bid. All the numbers worked out. I think that it's a really good number considering what's going on right now. I think there's a lot of people who are wanting to make sure they stay busy. Waldron and Sons is one of those. So I would appreciate your approval on this bid award.
Okay, and I think we actually don't think I know that the actual bid is in our packet, so hopefully everyone has had a chance to review those. Questions or comments from Commissioner Hall?
Nope. I'm ready to proceed.
Okay, Commissioner Hunt?
I'm ready to proceed also.
Okay, would someone make me a motion, please?
Okay, I would move that we approve the award of the bid for North Beaver Creek Bridge replacement to Waldron and Sons, Inc. in the amount of $581,431.47.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, next up, bid award 2020 with asphalt concrete, again presented by Roy Kinnan, our Public Works Director.
Yeah, this is for an asphalt paving project that is actually going to happen this fiscal year. So it has to be completed prior to July 1. It was part of the budget. It was a planned project, but we also had some other projects going on last summer and last fall. We were a little leery of possibly some overrun Everything came in basically under cost, and so it allowed us to have a little extra money in capital to get some roads paved. We're going to pave 3 roads in the Toledo-Newport area. 2 of them are between Toledo and Newport, Fruitvale Road and Western Loop. Western Loop is the little part of Old 229 that's kind of across Highway 20 from Dairy Queen. And then we're also going to pave Sunny Ridge Road, which is a road off of Elk City Road, upriver from Toledo. Asphalt prices came in extremely low. I mean, if you look at the engineer's estimate, and then looked at low bid, there's $120,000 difference. And I think, well, I know what happened was the engineer's estimate was actually figured in early April. And then if we all know, if you've read the news, the price of oil completely dropped out. The bottom just fell out of it. And that is reflected in the numbers that we got as far as asphalt. So we feel fortunate to get this done as cheaply as we're going to get it done. It's weather dependent. And so June, in Lincoln County, sometimes is kind of a crapshoot. So this is a project that we want to at least give notice to proceed to the contractor so we can pick a window of opportunity in June to get this paving done. So I would ask that the board approve this bid award for $234,511 to Road and Driveway of Newport.
Commissioners, this is Wayne. You could actually act on this matter today.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll move to award the bid as presented by Director Kenyon.
And I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, thank you. Last, before we adjourn, I just wanted to check in with Christy or Casey and see if we had any public comment submitted for this meeting.
I did have one public comment submitted for this meeting, received from Susan Davidson in regard to reopening VRBOs. And she is opposed.
Okay. All right, thank you. And I think we might have already gotten that into our inboxes, but just wanted to check to make sure nothing else had come in. So thank you, Christy.
So noted.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn our meeting. Our next Board of Commissioners meeting is Monday, June 1, 2020 at 3 o'clock. And again, we will be via internet for social distancing. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.